Grace stood in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting the strap of her crimson dress. She caught her own reflection and gave herself a confident smirk before picking up her purse. She barely acknowledged me as she turned, then casually dropped the sentence that shattered everything. "I'm heading out on a date. Try not to get too jealous." At first, I thought I had misheard her. Maybe it was a weird joke, her attempt at edgy humor. But the way she shifted her weight and avoided my eyes told me this was no joke. It was real. I clutched the edge of the kitchen counter, trying to make sense of the words still hanging in the air. "Come again?" I asked, keeping my voice far calmer than I felt inside. Grace let out a tired sigh, like the conversation was already beneath her. "You heard me," she said, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "I have plans with someone else." It wasn't just what she said. It was how easily she said it, like it was completely normal to wear a dress I had gifted her and announce she was going to spend the evening with another man. The word date echoed inside me like a dull thud to the chest. I should have said something, demanded an explanation, raised hell. But I froze, realizing how much of a stranger she had become to me. "So I'm just supposed to accept this?" I asked, forcing out a controlled breath. She gave me another one of those smirks, only colder this time. "I expect you to act like an adult," she said nonchalantly. "We've been together a long time. Marriage gets stale. I just want to explore what's out there." A dry chuckle escaped me. My heart was pounding, but I held it together on the outside. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You're seeing someone else now, no conversation, no regard for how I might feel?" She gave a half-hearted shrug. "You would have figured it out sooner or later. Why hide it? It's not like I'm leaving you." She wasn't remorseful, not even hesitant. She had already crossed the line and didn't care to look back. And in that moment, I knew I had a decision to make too. She stood there calmly, adjusting her dress like she hadn't just ripped our marriage apart with one flippant comment and a shrug. She was walking out on me for another man. It should have ignited fury, should have made me snap. But all I felt was clarity. A strange calmness settled in. Instead of rage, I felt sharp, present, more alive than I had in years. I had spent too long coasting through life, never questioning her, never snooping, never doubting. I wasn't the kind of husband who checked phones or questioned every text. I trusted her. Until now. She turned to face me again, annoyed that I hadn't reacted the way she expected. "What?" she asked, shifting her purse to the other shoulder. "Why are you acting weird?" "Weird?" I almost laughed out loud. Maybe I did. A bitter, joyless sound. "How long?" I asked flatly. She blinked. "How long what? How long has this been going on?" I locked eyes with her, letting the question hang. She rolled her eyes, waving me off like I was being unreasonable. "Don't start," she said. "It's not a big deal. Not a big deal." I gripped the back of the nearest chair, the words bouncing around my head. "You're walking out that door to let another man touch you," I said slowly. "That's not a big deal to you?" For the first time, I saw a flicker of something, maybe guilt, on her face. But she smothered it almost instantly with that smug exterior. "I didn't say it didn't matter," she replied coolly. "I'm just saying it's life. People grow. Relationships change. And at least I'm being upfront about it." Upfront. She actually expected credit for her honesty. I studied her. There was no shame, no doubt. Just a cold detachment, like she had moved on already. And that's when I realized she had. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not last week. But she had emotionally checked out long ago. "You're not the woman I married," I said quietly. That made her smile as if she'd been waiting for me to say it. "Of course not," she said with a slight laugh. "People change. I have. Maybe you should too." It felt like she was speaking to a stranger. "And what do you expect me to do with this information, Grace?" I asked. She raised her eyebrows, like the answer was obvious. "Accept it." She glanced at her watch. Like I was wasting her time. She was already mentally out the door. And now, so was I. I stood up straighter, my tone cool and decisive. "Then go." Her eyes widened slightly. That wasn't what she expected. "You're okay with this?" I gave her a smile, not one of affection, but of finality. "No," I said, "but you've already made your choice. Now I'm making mine." She hesitated. For the first time, I saw it, uncertainty. But she turned and walked out anyway, leaving behind a silence that pressed in on me like a weight. I didn't yell, didn't slam a door. I didn't beg her to stay. I stood there, still and quiet, while my mind raced faster than it had in years. She thought she held all the power, but she had no idea what was coming next. The silence wrapped around me like a heavy blanket after the door shut behind her. But it wasn't just quiet, it was the kind that creeps under your skin, makes familiar places feel foreign, almost haunted. She had walked out of our home like she hadn't just shattered years of marriage with a smug smile and a throwaway line. "I'm heading out on a date. Try not to get too jealous." Those words kept looping in my mind, a broken tape on repeat. And with every repetition, the weight pressing down on my chest grew heavier. I looked around the house, the same framed pictures, the cozy furniture we'd picked out together, the lingering trace of her perfume in the air, even the coffee mug she left half empty that morning on the counter. Everything was physically the same, yet emotionally unrecognizable. I sank into one of the dining chairs and rubbed my temples, thoughts spiraling. How long had she been planning this? How long had I been blind, walking through life with her thinking we were just another married couple facing normal highs and lows? Had she been seeing this guy for weeks? Months? Longer? I wanted to be furious, punch a wall, yell until my voice cracked, break something just to feel something. But none of that happened. What came instead was clarity. She had made a choice. And for the first time in a long time, so did I. Most men in my position might have gone after her, confronted her, demanded answers. They might have pleaded, broken down, begged for an explanation, a second chance. But I knew Grace. She wanted a scene. She wanted a meltdown. She wanted proof that I was the sad, spineless husband she had already mentally discarded. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I took a deep breath, picked up my phone, and made a call not to her. That would have been too easy. I dialed someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Hey, it's me," I said when the line clicked. A pause. Then a familiar voice. "Nathan?" It was my brother, Henry. We hadn't had a falling out or anything. It was just life. He moved out of state, started a family. I stayed behind, buried in the routine of work and a marriage I thought was solid. "I need a favor," I said bluntly. Another pause. Then, "What kind of favor?" My grip on the phone tightened. "I just need to get out of here for a bit." He exhaled. "You all right?" Was I? I didn't really know. "Not really," I admitted. "But I will be." There was a moment of silence. Then finally, "Come on over." I ended the call, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door without even bothering to lock it behind me. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure I'd be coming back. The drive to Henry's place felt longer than it used to. Too much time alone with my thoughts. Grace was never one for ordinary. She craved more excitement, more attention, more everything. Maybe I had blinded myself to it. Or maybe I had just convinced myself I was enough. Clearly, I wasn't. By the time I pulled into Henry's driveway, my mind was already made up. I wasn't going to run after her. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had checked out long ago. I was going to do the one thing she never saw coming, let her go. And I had a gut feeling she'd regret it more than I ever would. I sat in the car for a while before knocking on Henry's door. The engine hummed softly in the background as I stared at the house, its warm windows casting gentle light across the yard. I should have been home, curled up with Grace on the couch, pretending everything was fine. Instead, I was here. A part of me wanted to turn around, to go back and pretend it didn't happen. But I couldn't. Grace made sure of that. This wasn't about love. This wasn't even about betrayal. It was about power. She wanted to prove that she could control the narrative, that she could walk out and leave me shattered. She wanted to watch me unravel. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. I stepped out of the car and knocked twice. Henry opened the door in sweatpants and a hoodie, blinking like he was seeing a ghost. "Well, this is unexpected," he said, stepping aside. I walked in, taking in the familiar layout. It had been over a year, yet everything was the same. The old leather couch, the cluttered bookshelf, the faint aroma of coffee that always lingered in his place. Henry closed the door behind me and crossed his arms. "All right," he said. "What happened?" I let out a slow breath, dragging a hand through my hair. "Grace is cheating on me." The words came out awkwardly, like I was reciting someone else's story. Henry's expression dropped. "Are you sure?" A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "She told me herself." His eyes widened. "She told you?" "Yeah," I said. Not in a tearful confession either. More like mockery. She looked me in the face, threw on a dress, and told me she had a date. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. Henry let out a low whistle. "Damn." I collapsed onto the couch. For a while, he didn't say anything. He just sat across from me, tapping his fingers, thinking. Then he asked the question I had been waiting for. "So what now?" Betrayal is a wrecking ball. It knocks the wind out of you, hollows you out. But once the dust settles, you have two choices: stay the victim or take the reins. I refused to be the victim. I leaned forward and met his eyes. "I'm not chasing her," I said. "I'm not fighting. I'm not begging. I'm done." Henry lifted a brow. "Just like that." I shrugged. "What's the alternative?" Sit around and wait for her to come back while she's out with someone else. He nodded slowly. You're right. She doesn't deserve that. No, I said. She really doesn't. But even as I spoke the words, I could feel the ache settling in. Not because of the betrayal itself, but because of how calculated it all felt. She hadn't hidden it. She had dared me to react. That wasn't just cheating. That was psychological warfare. She planned this, I said out loud. Henry frowned. What do you mean? I ran a hand down my face, connecting dots that had been scattered until now. She's been pulling away for months. Staying late. Making excuses. Acting like I was just a piece of furniture. This wasn't some impulsive decision. This was planned. That realization should have crushed me. Instead, it lit a fire inside me. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a setup. And Grace? She had just triggered the wrong man. Just as I opened my mouth to speak again, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up with a name that twisted something in my gut. Grace. Henry leaned forward. Are you going to answer that? I stared at it for a few seconds, then slid to open the message. Don't wait up. I might be late. I laughed. Not a real laugh. One of those bitter, hollow sounds that bubbles up when you've been pushed beyond the point of caring. She still thought she was in control. Henry raised an eyebrow. She's really just all in, huh? Yeah, I said, slipping the phone into my pocket. But so am I. Because what Grace didn't realize, what she couldn't even begin to fathom, was that by the time she walked back into that house, it wouldn't be the same one she had left. She had made her move. Now it was my turn. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was tormented by rage or sorrow. Those emotions had already burned off, like fog under the morning sun. What remained was colder focused. Strategic. I lay there in Henry's guest room, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, mentally lining up the next steps. Grace had spent months crafting this plan of hers, believing she held all the cards. But for the first time in our marriage, I was holding mine close to my chest. As soon as the sun crept through the blinds, I got up, got dressed, and made my first real move. I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best I could find. Within the hour, I was sitting in a sleek office, facing a man who looked like he could out-argue a judge with one eyebrow raise. His name was Ron Jeremy, not that one. And he had a reputation for turning divorces into bloodbaths. His suit looked like it cost more than my car, and he greeted me with a firm handshake and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. So, he said, flipping through the folder I handed him, your wife's cheating on you, and she thinks you're just going to sit around and accept it? Pretty much, I replied. Ron leaned back and smirked. People like her always think they're untouchable. Until they're not. I already like this guy. I laid everything out, how she told me straight to my face, the weird emotional distance over the past few months, the indifference, the lack of remorse. Ron nodded along, tapping his pen thoughtfully. You haven't confronted her fully yet, he said, which means she still believes she has the upper hand. That's good. Let her keep thinking that. The more off guard she is, the cleaner this gets. A weight lifted from my shoulders as he spoke. For the first time since she walked out that door, I felt like I wasn't reacting, I was acting. That night, I returned home. I half expected it to feel like a stranger's house, like some ghost of my old life. But it didn't. It felt normal. Familiar. Like the house hadn't changed, only she had. The scent of her perfume still clung to the air, thick and sweet. She had stood in that same spot the night before, smiling, flipping her hair, and announcing she was leaving me for someone else, without saying it outright. I walked through the house slowly, taking it all in. The framed pictures. The bookshelves. The throw blanket on the couch. Nothing looked broken, but everything was. Then I heard the sound of her key in the lock. She stepped inside, tossed her purse onto the counter like it was any other Tuesday, then froze when she saw me. Oh, she said, clearly surprised. You're home. She hadn't expected me to be here. That much was obvious. I gave her a casual smile and leaned against the kitchen island. Where else would I be? She studied me, trying to read my body language. She was bracing for an outburst. A breakdown. A desperate plea. But I didn't give her any of that. Instead, I tilted my head. How was your date? A flicker of something, maybe discomfort, crossed her face. But she hid it quickly with a fake, sugary smile. It was great. Thanks for asking. I nodded like I cared. Then, without a word, I gestured toward the dining table, where a neat stack of papers was waiting. Her eyes followed my hand, and the moment she realized what she was looking at, the smirk dropped from her face. What's this? She asked, voice tightening. I let the silence do the work for a moment before replying. Divorce papers. I kept my tone calm. Almost pleasant. Figured I'd save you the effort. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out at first. She was caught off guard. She had expected chaos. She had not expected calm. "You're serious?" she finally said, voice quieter now. I nodded. "Absolutely." She gave a weak, breathless laugh, but it wasn't convincing. "So that's it? You're just done?" I pretended to think for a second, then shrugged. Yep. That was when I saw it, the first crack in her armor. Panic. She had bet everything on the assumption that I'd fight for her, beg her to stay, throw myself into a pathetic attempt to win her back. But I hadn't. And now the realization hit her like a gut punch. I turned away and headed for the stairs. She didn't say a word, but I felt her eyes tracking my every move. The silence was thick, pressing against my skin like humidity before a storm. I could hear the sharp intake of her breath, the shift in her posture, the subtle panic she tried to suppress. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I went upstairs, slowly, deliberately, each footstep echoing through the house. Our house for now. When I reached the bedroom, I locked the door behind me. Not out of fear. Out of principle. Because I wasn't giving her a conversation. She had already said everything she needed to say when she casually announced she was stepping out with someone else. I sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled slowly. My body felt heavy, but lighter than it had in months. The decision was made. The power shift was complete. From downstairs, I heard her pacing. She wasn't leaving. She was lingering, probably trying to figure out how to spin the narrative. How to stay the victim. How to turn the situation to her advantage. But this time, she had nothing. No leverage. No backup plan. I pulled out my phone and reopened my chat with Ron. Make sure she suspects nothing until it's all finalized. I stared at the message for a moment and smirked. She suspected nothing. Then came a knock. I ignored it. Another knock, louder. Still nothing from me. Then her voice, muffled through the door. "Nathan?" I closed my eyes. She only used my full name when she wanted something. "What?" I replied, flatly. A pause. "Can we talk?" Talk? She had every opportunity to talk before. When it would have mattered. Now, she wanted to talk because I hadn't broken down. Because I wasn't reacting how she needed me to. Typical. I stood, walked over to the door, and unlocked it, but didn't open it. If she wanted a conversation, she could have it on my terms. She pushed the door open, stepping inside like she owned the place. But she looked different now. Not confident. Not smug. Uncertain. Good. She folded her arms across her chest and tilted her head slightly, an old trick, trying to regain the upper hand. But her posture betrayed her. She was thrown off, rattled by the fact that I wasn't reacting the way she'd planned. "So, that's it," she said, trying to sound calm. "You're just ending things?" I met her gaze. Unblinking. "Yeah." She exhaled hard and shook her head like I was being unreasonable. "Come on, Nathan. Don't you think this is a little dramatic?" Dramatic? I nearly laughed in her face. She had walked out of our home like royalty off to a banquet, draped in arrogance, flaunting her betrayal like it was nothing. And now she had the audacity to call me dramatic? What exactly do you think is ridiculous? I asked, voice low. That I'm not chasing after you? That I'm not begging you to stay? Is that what you were counting on? Her lips parted slightly, caught off guard. This time, she didn't have a quick comeback. "I thought we had an understanding," she mumbled. My brow furrowed. "An understanding?" She sighed, clearly frustrated that I wasn't getting with her program. "Marriage isn't black and white, Nathan. It's not some fairy tale where people stay obsessed with each other forever. People grow. Things evolve." I just thought, she paused, biting her lip, "you'd be open-minded." I blinked, stunned at her sheer nerve. Then a dry laugh slipped out. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You think marriage means I stay loyal while you go have fun? That I should wait at home like some obedient dog while you date other people?" Her frown deepened. "That's not what I meant." "No," I said. "It's exactly what you meant." She looked away, jaw tightening. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she said, her voice quieter. I took a single step forward, just enough to force her to meet my eyes. "No, Grace," I said firmly. "You made it harder the second you decided I wasn't even worth the truth." Her jaw clenched. "So what now?" she asked. "We just throw away everything we built?" I tilted my head. "You already did." That hit her. I saw it, a subtle recoil. Just a twitch in her expression, but it was enough. I was tired. Not just emotionally, but deep in my bones. The kind of tired you feel when you've been carrying something heavy for far too long. I didn't want to argue. I didn't want closure. I just wanted her gone. "The divorce is happening," I said, voice even, resolute. "You can act surprised all you want, but don't pretend like you didn't choose this." We stood in silence for a long beat. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out of the room. This time, I didn't watch her go. I didn't care anymore. For the first time in years, I wasn't fighting for something that had already been dead. When the door clicked shut behind her, a strange emotion settled over me. It wasn't grief. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't even anger. It was freedom. I ran a hand over my face and exhaled, listening to the distant sounds of her moving downstairs. The soft clink of a glass. The quiet shuffling of feet on hardwood. She was still in the house, but not for long. She was processing it all. The unraveling. The loss of control. She hadn't expected any of this. In her version of the story, I was supposed to fight. I was supposed to beg. She thought I'd grovel at her feet, desperate to keep her. But she never once considered that maybe I had already let her go. I walked over to the window and pulled the curtain slightly aside. The neighborhood looked normal, calm, quiet, mundane, which was ironic, considering my entire world had just been ripped apart. Then I heard her voice. Soft at first. Muffled. She was on the phone. At first, I didn't care to listen. But there was something in her tone, something not quite right. She didn't sound smug anymore. She sounded rattled. I stepped toward the bedroom door and cracked it open just a sliver. I don't know, she whispered sharply into her phone. He's not reacting the way I thought he would. I froze. My hand tightened on the doorknob. My stomach coiled into knots. Who was she talking to? More importantly, why did she sound nervous? No, I didn't expect him to be happy about it, she continued, clearly agitated. But I thought he'd put up a fight. He just agreed. It's like he doesn't even care. There was a pause. Then she said something that made my blood turn cold. What if I miscalculated? I nearly laughed. Miscalculated? That was the first sensible thing she'd said all week. I leaned silently against the frame of the door and listened. Another pause. No, he doesn't know, she said. Why would I tell him? That would ruin everything. Then came the nail in the coffin. I'll handle it. Just stick to the plan. The plan. Of course there was a plan. There always was with her. She was never the type to act without a safety net. This wasn't impulsive, it was plotted out. And I was never supposed to respond like this. I was supposed to be blindsided. I was supposed to beg. I was supposed to be emotionally destroyed, too broken to see the trap she had laid. But she had made one fatal error. She underestimated me. I took a slow, quiet step back, letting the door click shut behind me. I stood still for a long moment, pulse steady, mind razor-sharp. This wasn't just cheating. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a game. And now, I was ready to play. For the next few days, I said nothing. I didn't confront her. I didn't change my routine. I didn't even look at her longer than necessary. But I watched her. I studied every move, every twitch of uncertainty, every moment she hesitated before speaking. Grace had always been confident, smooth, in control. But now there were cracks. Subtle, but growing. She was checking her phone more often, staring at it, typing and deleting messages before finally sending them. She'd hover in doorways, open her mouth to say something, then think better of it and walk away. She was nervous, unsettled. And that told me one thing: my silence was louder than any screaming match. She had expected a meltdown, a sob story, an explosion. Instead, she got indifference. And people like Grace? They don't know what to do with indifference. I let her stew in it. 3 full days. Then, on the 4th, I set everything in motion. Once she was out of the house, probably off seeing him, I grabbed the folder Ron had helped prepare and made the final calls. The divorce paperwork was complete, airtight, and brutally one-sided in my favor. Thanks to Ron and the thorough documentation of her betrayal, everything was ready to go. The house? Mine. The joint assets? Mine. The evidence of infidelity? Compiled, signed, sealed. Grace had walked into this mess thinking she was the mastermind. But I had flipped the board without ever raising my voice. By the time she walked back into the house that night, she was walking into a trap of her own making. I sat at the kitchen table, a single glass of whiskey in front of me. The house was dark except for the overhead light above the island. The door opened. Her heels clacked softly against the floor. She paused when she saw me. There it was again, that flicker of hesitation. Good. Didn't expect you to be home, she said lightly, trying to keep her tone even. I didn't respond. I just gestured to the chair across from me. Sit. She raised a brow. What is this? Sit. Reluctantly, she did. Her hands fidgeted in her lap. She scanned the room like she was preparing for something dramatic. But there were no theatrics. Only silence. Then I slid the folder toward her. She stared at it for a moment, then slowly opened it. Her eyes scanned the contents and froze. You've been planning this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned back in my chair, calm, collected. I figured if you had a plan, it was only fair I had one too. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Her hands clenched slightly. This is the divorce papers, I said, cutting her off smoothly. Already filed. Already approved. I'm just letting you know what comes next. For the first time since that night in the hallway, I saw it. Not arrogance. Not defiance. Fear. She blinked. Her lips parted like she wanted to protest, but she couldn't form the words. She started. I held up a hand. No, I said flatly. Don't explain. I don't care what excuse you think justifies this. I don't care what your plan was. And I really, truly don't care who he is. She opened her mouth again, but I didn't let her speak. I only care that you leave this house. Tonight. That landed like a punch. Nathan, she said, breath catching. This was your choice, I continued. You wanted to explore, right? Congratulations. You're free. Just not here. Not with me. Not in this house. She was blinking rapidly now, panic rising. You don't understand it. I understand better than you think, I said coldly. You thought I was weak. You thought I'd crumble. You thought I'd fight for someone who didn't even have the decency to lie well. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Then she laughed. A bitter, breathless sound. I guess I did miscalculate, she muttered. I stood, grabbing my keys from the counter. Pack your things, I said. You're leaving tonight. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just sat there, staring at the folder like it was a foreign object she couldn't comprehend. Because for the first time since she started this game, she had lost. And me? I walked out the door without looking back. I wasn't done yet. Did I let the man who helped wreck my marriage walk away untouched? Not a chance. I wanted a name. So I went back to Ron. He wasn't just a lawyer. He had resources, connections. We met in his office again, the room thick with the scent of cigars and old leather. I need to know who he is, I said quietly. Ron didn't even flinch. I figured you'd ask. Give me a couple days. And if I want more than just a name? I asked carefully. Ron studied me, his fingers drumming on the edge of his desk. We'll talk after you get the name. 3 days later, I was back. Ron slid a folder across the desk without a word. John Wayne, he said. I flipped through the pages. Mid to late 30s. Finance guy. Expensive suit. Slick haircut. Smug expression. The kind of guy who probably thought karma was just a myth. Where does he work? Downtown firm, Ron said. Senior analyst. Oh, and he's married. 2 kids. Of course he was. A homewrecker with a family of his own. Classic. I let out a low chuckle. So this guy wrecks homes for fun? Ron nodded, taking a drag from his cigar. Looks like it. Then he added, for a little extra, I can make sure he gets the message. Loud and clear. I met his eyes. How much extra? He named a number. It wasn't cheap, but it was worth every cent. I pulled out my checkbook, scribbled the amount, and slid it across the table. Make it hurt. Ron smirked and tucked the check away. It will. 2 days later, I got the call. John had been jumped outside his office late one night. Just as he was unlocking his car, a couple of very enthusiastic strangers helped him reconsider his life choices. They took his wallet, his watch, and made sure he'd never ruin another man's marriage the same way again. He spent a week in the hospital. I didn't send flowers. I didn't visit. But word got around he was done. Grace, meanwhile, tried to fight the divorce. She dragged it out for months. 7, to be exact. She threw every accusation she could. False claims, fake infidelity, emotional manipulation, even a bid for spousal support. Ron tore her case to pieces in court. Calm, methodical, and merciless. Every lie, every contradiction, every smug little move she had made, it was all exposed. By the end, the judge ruled completely in my favor. The house? Mine. The savings? Mine. The dignity? Fully restored. Grace? She got nothing. Eventually, she left town. Moved to Chicago, according to mutual contacts. Chasing a fresh start. I didn't care. She was no longer my problem. For the first time in a very, very long time. I was free. I never heard from Grace again after the court ruled in my favor. No apology. No second-guessing. No teary, I made a mistake phone call in the middle of the night. And I never looked for one. Because by then, I had moved beyond needing closure from someone who never respected me to begin with. I had rebuilt everything, my home, my finances, my peace. But more than that, I had rebuilt myself. For a while, I kept my circle small. I focused on work, on friends I trusted, on rediscovering who I was outside of her shadow. It's strange how marriage can make you lose parts of yourself without realizing it. Until one day, you're staring at a mirror and barely recognize the man looking back. But that man came back. Stronger, sharper, wiser. I started traveling again, something Grace always found a waste of money. I joined a gym, started writing, picked up hobbies I had long forgotten. Little by little, I began living for me again. And one night, over dinner with friends, I met someone. She wasn't flashy or dramatic. She didn't smirk when she talked. She didn't play games. Her name was Elise. Soft-spoken but smart. Kind, but not naive. The kind of woman who asked about your day and actually listened when you answered. We took things slow. She knew I was divorced. I told her the truth, not the messy details, but enough to let her know I had scars and I wasn't in a rush to reopen them. She never pushed. Instead, she showed up. Consistently. Genuinely. With patience and warmth that I hadn't realized I was starving for. Months turned into a year. A year turned into 2. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I found peace. Not the kind that comes from revenge or legal victories, or watching someone fall apart after hurting you. No. This peace came from letting go. From refusing to carry someone else's betrayal on your shoulders any longer. From realizing that just because someone broke their vows doesn't mean they get to break you. I sometimes think back to that night Grace stood in front of the mirror, fixing her dress like she hadn't just burned our marriage to the ground. I remember the way she smirked and said, "Try not to be too jealous." And I wonder if she ever expected the silence that followed to be the sound of her entire world falling apart. She thought she held all the power. She thought I'd beg, crawl, cry. But what she never understood, what people like her never do, is that the most dangerous man in the room isn't the one shouting. It's the one who says nothing and smiles. Because that's the man who's already won. If you enjoyed this story, dear listeners, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for being here. Until next time. Choose peace over chaos, power over pity, and always know your worth.